Hi, welcome to House on Meadows. Let's talk about filling up our pantry. Welcome to House on Meadows. Welcome back to the channel. You know, there's lots of ways to fill up our pantries. We can start by dehydrating simply because it plugs one of the holes in our ship of leakage. We have a lot of food that gets left over. We don't want it to go to waste, especially produce. It's so expensive. So much of it is seasonal. We don't want to have it go to waste. So we're going to save that immediately by dehydrating it or freezing it. But there are many, many other things that we're going to be covering in videos to come, such as canning. We're going to tackle that later. Let's look at some of the things, though, from the dehydrating. Other things you could do: ginger. Ginger's really important. It's not just for recipes for dinner. This is a wonderful medicinal thing to have. You could make cough syrup with this. It's really crucial for teas, things like that. We've got sliced oranges. When you can slice these up and grind them and make a powder, similar to the lemon powder that I used in the tzatziki recipe recently. Over here, eggs. Yes, you can dehydrate eggs safely. You'll just crack them in a bowl, whip them up like a scramble. Don't cook them, but put them on the plastic trays and set those inside your dehydrator for a little while according to the manufacturer's directions. Let them dry out and crumble them up. Maybe put them in your Cuisinart to get them into a fine dust. These reconstitute great. Virtually no difference in the taste and texture. You've got mushrooms here. You could see how this works. You've got your jar's not going to be quite full, especially since these are in my working pantry. I don't have to run up to the store if I run low or run out and I want to make cacciatore or something. I could go ahead and grab some mushrooms from my jars. It's ready to go all the time, simply because I kept all of the mushrooms. So if I had 3 mushrooms left in the fridge, and they're still fine, they're not gooey, they're not gross, but I have a feeling I'm not going to use them soon, put them in the dehydrator. Save them. Green onions. I can't tell you how much I love this jar of green onions. It's like gold because I don't have to run to the market for, what are they, 88 cents a bunch, and you're getting maybe 3 or 4 in the bunch now. That's it. So I don't have to worry about it. Every time I have one left over, or I've got them out of the garden, or if there's a sale, especially if there is a sale, I will buy a lot of them if it's out of season especially, and dehydrate them, add them to the jar. And you could see this is going to fluctuate because I use them. They're in my working pantry. I've got some radishes that I just started. I took them out of my garden actually recently, and I don't know if you've never had oven roasted radishes. If you've never had oven roasted radishes with butter and salt, please give it a try. It is so delicious. So I'm gonna save up, but you could see how it starts. All right, over here we've got, what's next? Oh, turnip greens. Oh my gosh, these taste, the turnip greens, these are the leaves. I dry almost all of my leaves on a rack. I don't put them in the dehydrator because if you air dry them, they maintain as much nutrients as possible that way. But these taste a lot like horseradish. And I thought, wow, wouldn't these be great to grind up and put into Bloody Mary mixes? Yeah. So some other things. I pulled this out of the freezer. It's a lemon that I was using, just grinding it. And I don't want to throw this away. So I put it into the freezer because I can use a cheese grater, grate it up, get all of that out of there and throw that in the dehydrator too. That's pretty much how I get my my lemon dust or my dried lemon powder. That's how I do it. There's other things. Let's talk about freeze drying. Okay, so I've got some diced beef here, freeze-dried diced beef. I also have, which I prefer this. These are freeze-dried banana chips. And I prefer freeze-dried banana chips over dehydrated banana chips. That's just my preference. So I buy these on Amazon when they're on sale. And I've seen them go as low as I think $8 for this big can. And I think it's fantastic. But freeze drying is a good way to go. I don't personally have my own freeze dryer. And I've chosen to not get one at the time because I'm kind of apprehensive about payments of any kind. I prefer to use cash up front, pay it off right away. And right now it's just not a feasible thing I could do. So what I've looked into are payments for freeze dryers. And the one that I was interested in, it was an $88 a month commitment for, I don't know, a while. But I chose not to get it. And here's why. My family is small and I have to rotate this food in my pantry. I cannot just put it in the shelves and let it set for whatever, however length of time. It's got to be used and rotated. So having said that, I understand these cans, some of these cans are going to last, like the beef. It's going to last a while. That's in my long-term stockpile, actually. But I would rather use the $88 a month that I would have spent on the freeze dryer instead of paying for the freeze dryer. Just buy 1 or 2 or 3 cans of something that's already freeze dried. It's already ready to go. It's packaged. It's done. And I could just add to my stockpile that way. That's an option I've chosen to go with personally. So you've got the freeze dryer thing going on. That's a wonderful thing to have. You can find the sales on NutriStore and Augustin Farms. They're both wonderful places to look into. Another thing we're going to be covering in future videos is pressure canning. And I know a lot of people are afraid of it. I was afraid of it for a really long time. But once I got the hang of it, I just got hooked. I do all of my pressure canning outside now. I have a setup out on my back patio. I prefer to do it that way. That way it feels safer. You've got things like, here's a good pint of chicken breast. I mean, how valuable is this? Especially with prices going up and down. It's insane. But you could also do water bath canning. Things like the peach pie filling. How fun, how simple and fast it would be to put a pie together, right? You just got it in there. So those are wonderful things. You don't have to just dehydrate your produce. You could actually can it. These are carrots. And here are some beets that I got from my garden last year. And you could dehydrate beets and carrots also. But I have them like this. They're ready to go. Add to a salad or casserole. One of my recent favorite things to can is salsa verde. Oh, it's so wonderful. And you can control the heat. It's just a great thing to have. What else can we can? Tallow. Tallow is amazing. It is a wonderful product. You could cook with it and you can use it in all sorts of beauty supplies and facial creams and makeup remover, hand lotions, all kinds of things. And it's a labor of love. Tallow takes a long time to cook down, but it's worth it. Another thing we've got here are ghee. Just super smart to have. It's really expensive in the store. So my ghee stockpile is a treasure. Here's a fun one. Butter. You can just straight butter, and you don't need to use any fancy equipment. You're just gonna melt the butter down. Just melt it. Keep stirring it to keep the fat solids moving around. Pour it into the jar, a good clean sterile jar with no cracks, and you're going to wipe the rim just like you would anything else. Put the cap on, and the heat from that butter is going to make the lid come down and seal. That's what'll cause your seal. And so you could keep butter on hand. And I know this is a pint-sized jar, but I think there's like 2.5 sticks of butter in here. It's actually quite a lot. I think that's how much it is. Something else I keep in jars, my starter, my sourdough starter. I think this is a huge, huge deal to keep in your pantry. It's got a whole lot of uses for breads, cakes, waffles, cookies, all kinds of things. And I love my sourdough starter. My husband brought this one home from work from a friend of his, and that guy got it from, I think, Iran or Ukraine, but it's the best starter I've ever had. It's a monster. But I hate adding to my starter every day. I hate adding flour to it every day. And we're not a large group of people in my house. So adding flour every single day to my starter, we're not going to have that much bread. So to me, it's a waste of flour. What I've chosen to do instead is to just dehydrate all of my starter. And I've ended up with several jars of this now. But what happens is when I want to make a loaf, I measure out how much starter I need. I put it into the recipe, get it going. If I have any starter left and I've used my reserve, my surplus for something else like waffles or something, if I have any left over, any discard, I will just dehydrate the rest of it and put it right back in the jar. Okay, another thing we're going to be covering are cheeses. We're going to be making our own cheese. Have you seen the price of it? It's stupid. It's just obnoxious. But I've learned how to make cheese, and it's actually quite simple. And you can use ingredients like powdered milk that make a really good product. Not your ordinary powdered milk that you might remember from your childhood. This is the Nido powdered milk. You want to use that. It's whole milk. It's a wonderful product. Makes great cheese. Things like this big wheel of cheddar that I've got going on. I'm super, super proud of that. Wonderful things to be, these are all just different things that you can start adding to your pantry yourself over time. This took a while to get here. It took some time. It didn't happen. You've got the idea. Look how the radishes start. You don't have a whole lot. You've got to start somewhere. For instance, here are some navy beans that I had, just a little pack. But once I reconstitute these, this is going to make enough for my family. A big stew. It's wonderful, but this is another method. You can put it into a Ziploc airtight baggie, seal it up. This is going to be good for some time. Likewise with lentils, you could do all sorts of things in beans. Doesn't have to just be that. Let's talk about some frozen stuff. Okay, in my freezer I have this wonky little bag full of vegetable pieces. So whenever I have the tops of some carrots or some celery or peppers or whatever, I'm going to toss it in the bag, throw it in the freezer. And the reason I do that is so I could eventually have enough to make a stock. Boil it up with maybe a chicken carcass or just even more vegetables. Make a vegetable stock or a chicken stock, something like that. You just want to save everything that you have because there's a purpose for it. For instance, last week I made some dried apples. I had about 9 green apples and I had bought them to make a pie and I never got to it. So I went ahead and I peeled and cored all of those apples. I dehydrated the apples, added some cinnamon to them, and they dried up perfectly. So awesome. But I didn't throw away the cores or the peels. I kept them because those are like gold. So I saved them, got them in my reusable Ziploc, threw them in the freezer. There's one of 2 things that I'm going to do with this. One of them is make apple cider vinegar. I have to check and see how much I have of my last batch before I commit. If I still have enough to get by, I won't make more of that. But what I will do is make apple jelly with that. Apple scrap jelly is delicious. And, you know, I make a lot of jellies, but I don't eat all of them. They make great gifts. People like homemade jelly. You can do that. Another thing, Mylar bags. You want to get some of these. This one's currently holding a whole lot of wheat berries because I grind my own wheat and make my flour products from that. But we'll be getting into that into another video as well. So you can see there's just so many different ways to have food security in your pantry besides just dehydrating. Another thing, let's get to the last of it. Let's talk about booze. I'm big on keeping vodka and rum in the house because there's so many different things that you could do with vodka and rum. I use rum to make cough syrup. I cannot stand rum in a drink, a cocktail. I think it's awful, but I can put it into the cough syrup and it's great. But vodka, if you take good vodka, you could make tinctures like this. This one, oh gosh, it's thyme. And over here, I've made extracts. This cinnamon extract, my favorite. I'm constantly going through this thing. I absolutely love it. I've got one that's kind of percolating, orange extract. And you can tell over time that these are ready because they'll no longer smell like alcohol, really. They'll smell like the thing that's in it. And then you can tell, oh, you're headed into a good territory because you've got some really great things going on. Coffee liqueur, Kahlua, basically. This is wonderful, especially around the holidays. And the last thing, I don't think I could pick this up, but the last thing I want to show you is one of my new favorite things, and that is making wine, okay? So this is my red wine. I also make white wine, and that one's my favorite, the white wine. And I'm making these out of just simple grape juices. Yeah, and bread yeast, and it works. But there's so many different things you could do in different ways. You don't have to just dehydrate. I'm not telling you to go run out and dehydrate everything, but I am saying to start off getting one because it's cheap. It's cheap. And you can start saving things immediately. So that was a lot of information. And that was just about the food part of keeping our pantry full. We haven't even begun to discuss the household items that we're going to be covering. How to make your own shampoo, deodorant, toothpaste, Ziploc bags, getting rid of the plastic wrap, your own dryer sheets, all of these things. We'll be covering that also so that we can learn how to become more self-sufficient and spend less money at the grocery store and keeping some of that hard-earned money in our own pockets. I hope that you guys liked today's content. Please be sure to leave a comment and let me know what you think. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We'll see you again soon.